I've lived in hot springs my entire life. I always knew that there were hot springs here, but I never knew what they were really used for. Who first used hot springs, and why are they here? I do believe that the Hunter and Dunbar expedition is worth remembering. Without this expedition, Hot Springs, Arkansas would not be the medical and tourist powerhouse that it is today. Why are these hot springs so special? After all, hundreds of thousands of tourists flock here every year. I was wondering these questions, so I went to the Hot Springs National Park archaeologist Victoria Richard for answers. What were all the advantages that Hot Springs had versus the surrounding areas medicine-wise?
So the biggest thing that we had here was a big concentration of hot springs, all in one place. And each one of those springs had a slightly different temperature, a slightly different mineral content, and so the different springs were thought to be good for different ailments. So before all of the kind of modern bathhouses were built, people would come in, find the spring they liked for whatever ailment they wanted, and they would just dig a hole for them to soak in, so the water could cool down a little bit, because coming out of the ground it's actually scalding hot and would burn them. So you would go to cornhole if you had something going on with your feet, or you would go to Row Spring if you had neuralgia, for example. And because our springs aren't volcanic, they don't smell all sulfur the way some of the other ones do. So people like to come here, and it got this reputation for being just incredibly healing.
Thank you. And what were all the disadvantages?
The main problem was the location. Hot springs used to be the frontier, the Wild West. It was very difficult to get here, and really the only way to do it before a train was built in 1875 was a rickety wagon ride across dirt roads. At
5,550 acres, Hot Springs National Park is the smallest national park in the U.S., but it is the first national park. I've lived on the other side of Hot Springs, Arkansas, a little outside the national park. Most of the water's flow path is hidden beneath the Ouachita Mountains. It's the only national park system that gives their water to the general public. As a Hot Springs native, my mom has made me hike plenty of trails, but not all 26 miles that Hot Springs has to offer. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not a huge fan of hiking. Well, yeah, I'm kind of saying that I'm not a huge fan of hiking. Now, all of this leads me to ask, it goes along with the first question, why did people flock to the water to get a bath?
All right, so today, if you get sick, you go to the doctor, you get antibiotics, right? Mm-hmm. Antibiotics weren't really invented until World War II. So before that, people were looking for a way to get relief from their ailments, from their injuries, from whatever they had going on. And so they were looking for things like herbal remedies or anything that would just help them out a little bit. And what people found was that soaking in hot springs, drinking the water, doing the walks that went along with the regiment, all of that kind of stuff kind of helped them feel a little bit better. It, maybe reduced some inflammation. And on top of that, they were actually bathing and staying in a clean place. And so there were fewer germs, and it kind of gave their bodies a chance to recover a little bit more. And as far as why people were flocking here specifically, so there were a couple different reasons depending on your socioeconomic class. So we talked about how at first they would dig those holes and do different things. When that kind of stopped, that was kind of the end of the free bathing on the hillside. The government actually built a free government bathhouse. So poor people who could not afford to go to the bathhouses still had a place to go. And that was not really normal. Most of the other hot springs resorts, you had to pay or you were not bathing there. At the same time President Jefferson sent out Lewis and Clark for the Louisiana Purchase, he also sent out William Dunbar and George Hunter to the rumored hot springs area. Why are Lewis and Clark more known than Hunter and Dunbar? So the biggest thing is that the Lewis and Clark expedition was a lot bigger than the Hunter and Dunbar expedition. So Hunter and Dunbar were out for about 3 months exploring just the Ouachita River and Hot Springs area. Lewis and Clark, on the other hand, spent 2.5 years out, going all the way from St. Louis to the Pacific Ocean.
President Thomas Jefferson illustrates, in my last letter, I informed you that I expect Congress would authorize me to take measures for exploring the principal western waters of the Mississippi and Missouri. Jefferson to Dunbar. William Dunbar was born to an aristocratic family in Elgin, Morayshire, Scotland in 1749. Dunbar owned a forest plantation 9 miles south of Natchez, and he was an experienced surveyor who traded with the Indians. To get the water, did Hunter and Dunbar have a good relationship with the natives and Indians to get the water?
So by the time Hunter and Dunbar got here, Hot Springs was pretty well known by Euro-Americans, and there weren't really a lot of Native Americans living here. So they talk about in their journal getting here, there was already a cabin here, and they didn't really mention interacting with any Native Americans while they were in Hot Springs.
The boat that Hunter designed and brought down from Pittsburgh did not work right in the inland waterways. The Western Journal's George Hunter illustrates, Mr. Dunbar concluded to hire another boat and leave our old one until our return. After having a rocky start to Hot Springs, Hunter and his teenage son, along with Dunbar and his 2 slaves and a servant and 13 soldiers, set sail from St. Catherine's Landing on the Mississippi River. Though their journey was fairly short compared to others, but their maps were very detailed. But what would Hunter and Dunbar have seen when they first entered Hot Springs?
Right, so, we already mentioned there was at least one cabin here. They said it was kind of rickety. I think it was being used by kind of trappers and hunters and people who just wandered through and wanted to stop for the night. But it would have looked very different. Downtown Hot Springs obviously is very developed at this point, right? So you have all the bathhouses, and people actually blasted back into the hillside a little bit to widen the valley to make space for all of those buildings. On top of that, all of the springs would have been more free-flowing, whereas now, they're all capped and funneled into a thermal water system. So they would have walked in, it was almost empty of people, right? You got the springs flowing down a narrower valley, and then this nice open valley floor with the Hot Springs Creek running down the middle of it.
Thank you. You said that there weren't a lot of natives, but what did the natives believe the water would do to them?
So that's kind of a tricky question. So there were Native Americans here before Hunter and Dunbar for a very long time, just not when they got here. And as far as like the archaeological evidence, we have evidence of people being in this area for at least 12,000 years. And for the most part, it looks like the Native American people were coming to this area actually to quarry the Nabaculite. And I'm sure they were using the springs while they were here, but it doesn't seem like that was the primary purpose of coming.
Hot Springs, Arkansas is a tourist and medical powerhouse. At one point in time, it was the most visited place in the United States. Without George Hunter and William Dunbar going out on this brave expedition, we would have discovered the hot springs eventually, but it wouldn't be the medical and tourism powerhouse that it is today. The Hunter and Dunbar expedition provided people with the first landscape and scenery of what these rumored hot springs would be like. For a while, people have to have a prescription to get a bath. Civil War vets later flocked to hot springs to relieve their ailments after the war. This just leads me to ask, can you still get a bath?
Absolutely. There's a few places on Bathhouse Row that still function as actual bathhouses. So you've got the Buckstaff that still does the traditional bathing where you go in, you're in a room by yourself, you get a bath. You've got the Quapaw that's more of a modern spa. Bigger pools, you go in, everyone kind of just hangs out. You can also go to the Hotel Hale, which actually pumps the thermal waters into their room. And then the Arlington Hotel still uses the thermal water.
In the end, come visit Hot Springs. We have more than just hot springs, we also have some great coffee joints, hiking trails, and beautiful views. It is a great place to live and visit. Come to Hot Springs and you will not be disappointed.